10th of February, Rabbi First Pirke Avos.
Good morning, man.
Thank God, doing well.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, got it. Fine. All right, Bez Hashem. Good morning, this is Rabbi Shlomo First here, Yeshiva Tzamanavshi here in Shalim here Zoom. This is our first year we're learning Pirke Avos, the name of Rabbi Yeshiva, in the third parak of Avos. We're again trying to work and understand a little bit more, as much as humanly possible, to understand the concept of Tzelem Elokim. Good morning, Roy.
Good morning, Rabbi. First, good morning, everybody.
All right. So as just as preface, let me say this as a preface. That as difficult as we may try and try to understand the concept of Tzelem Elokim, and it's obviously a very deep and profound concept. Nevertheless, since the Torah mentions it, right, that means it's there for us to understand in some way possible. And you see that the Meforshim, the Rishonim, the Achronim, Rashi, the Rambam, the Rashbats, as we saw, Bartanura, the Maharal Prague, they all give a glimpse into what this concept is all about. So when we're trying to learn it, we're also supposed to try and understand it as best as possible. So we're in the Rashbat's explanation that, and again, just as a preface to what we're going to see now in the Rashbat's, the Rashbat's is using a very grammatical approach that the good morning, Barry, that the approach to understanding this concept of Tzelem Elokim is based on the premise that when something has a superior quality, it's superiorly significant to something else, meaning it's given a special distinction. And Adam was especially significant of all the creations of everything that took place in the mice of creating of the world and universe and all of existence as we know it. And because that's the whole purpose of existence. The whole purpose of existence is that Adam should be created, and Adam should have a place where he can exist. And the purpose of his existence is to acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, the Adam was given, as we've seen, an ability to understand and recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's his tachlis, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu is placing a person in a physical world in order that he should, in this physical world, come to an understanding and appreciation and an acknowledgement of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is completely spiritual, non-physical. So that's the whole purpose of Adam, to in a physical environment come to the conclusion and recognition of a spiritual entity, meaning the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we were given the intelligence and the senses and the understanding and wisdom to be able to do that. And so that's our superiority over everything else that exists in creation, that everything else in creation doesn't have the ability to understand the HaKadosh Baruch Hu the way we do, because that's not their purpose. Their purpose is not to come to a conclusion and a realization and acknowledgement of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though they may in some minor way be able to relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as their creator, but that's obviously impossible for us to know. There's no way that we can understand and understand the experience, conscious experience of anything that is alive, and even more so if it's inanimate, something which we just don't have the have the ability to relate to that. I mean, even by, we'll see this mimer. There's a mimer in Pierke Avos that you shouldn't judge a person until you have stood in his shoes. You have to be able to judge a person only if you're able to feel and understand his exact situation. How can I judge somebody else if I don't know his exact situation? Only until you're in his exact situation can you judge that person. So obviously we can't put ourselves into the situation of an amoeba, of a cat, of a butterfly, so try and put yourself into the experience of a butterfly that's caught in a tornado. I mean, you can't even put yourself into the experience of a butterfly when it's fluttering through the wheat fields of Arkansas. So if you can't do that, you certainly can't understand you can't put yourselves in the shoes of a butterfly. You can't put yourselves in the shoes of a cat. You can't put yourself in the shoes of an amoeba. So only we have our own way of relating to Kadosh Baruch Hu with the tools and intelligence that he's blessed us with. Likewise, every other creature, according to what Kadosh Baruch Hu expects of them in terms of understanding their place in the universe and their part to play in fulfilling the purpose of the universe, which, as I said again, is the ability and potential for Adam to realize and relate to a Kadosh Baruch Hu as his creator and understand that there's obligations based on that. So therefore, we have our intelligence, and everything else in the world is created simply for us to try and achieve that. So therefore, according to the Rashbats, we call Tselem Elokim, that just as he mentioned, and we'll see this inside again, we'll look at it again and read it inside, just as he mentioned that Har Sinai was called Har Elokim, the mountain of Hashem, and Moshe Rabbeinu was called Ish Elokim, the man of Hashem, and the other examples that he brings. The base of the Mikdash was called Beis Elokim, the house of Kadosh Baruch Hu, because all these three examples, and I'll give a few others besides that, they were supremely significant because of the events that took place on them. Number one, Har Sinai, the person who he was, Moshe Rabbeinu, was able to bring the Torah in its form as we have it now to Klal Yisrael and to the rest of the world as well. And the base Elokim, the base of Mikdash, it's the place that's supremely significant and unique in its ability to be a place of prayer, a place of karbonos, a place of prayer. So therefore, the expression Elokim was attached to these other words: Ish, Moshe Rabbeinu, Ish, Elokim, Bayis, the base of Mikdash, base Elokim, Har, Elokim, Har Sinai, the place where Kadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah, because that was supremely significant for that one particular point in time, even though it doesn't have any particular significance now. There's no significance to Har Sinai now. In Jewish Torah law and philosophy, there's no significance to Har Sinai. At this point, you don't see any monuments being erected. Maybe they do have them now, I don't know, but there's no monuments erected there, and there's no special kedusha there. It could be that if you see that place, you might be able to make a bracha because of the miracles that took place there. That's a separate thing, because we have to remember the miracles that Kadosh Baruch Hu did for Klal Yisrael. So there are special times when we make brachas for, and at certain places, you see the place where we cross the Yam Suf, where we cross the Yarden. So according to the Shulchan Aruch, there are opportunities to make brachas at those times and at those places when you see them. Right? That's simply because we want to reinforce ourselves in the acknowledgement of the miracles that the Kadosh Baruch Hu did for us. But there's not that there's any specific kedusha to those places. In contrast, when you compare that to the base of Mikdash, right, and Yerushalayim and Eretz Israel for that matter, there is, for example, kedusha. The Makam and Mikdash is kodesh, right? It's still forbidden for anybody to go onto the what's known as what we call Har Bayis, because it's still considered kodesh. Because that was something which was done, and Eretz Israel is also considered kodesh. I mean, we this year happens to be year of Shemitah, so there's certain kedushas aretz, whether it's the rice or the rabbanan, that's a separate question in the poskim. But the fact that Eretz Israel does have kedusha is something which was given to it when Yeshua, Klal Yisrael conquered Eretz Israel, and when we came back with Ezra back from Babel. So the kedusha of Eretz Israel, the kedusha of Yerushalayim, the kedusha of the base of Mikdash does have somewhat of a eternal permanence, whereas other things like Har Sinai, no kedusha to Har Sinai, where we crossed the Yarden, where we crossed the Yam Suf. No Kedusha there. I don't think you'll find any monuments as to saying this was the place where the Jewish people crossed the Yam Suf. It's not like you go to someplace there in Belgium, you see a monument. This is where Waterloo, the Battle of Waterloo took place, or the non-Jews are very fond of making monuments for various different places and occasions that give it some historical continuity and some historical permanence. But the permanence that these places have is that we're always remembering that Hashem took us for the Yam Suf, right? We mention crossing the Yam Suf every day, right? In Pesukei Zimra, the grand finale of our Pesukei Zimra every morning is the Shir Shel Yam, just before Yishtabach. That's a personal and a collective communal acknowledgement of the great miracle that the Kadosh Baruch Hu did for us when he took us through the Yam Suf. So it's not something that you just put up a place where we put a monument and maybe on a tourist tour you'll happen to pass by this monument and wow, that's a nice monument they put up, and forget about it after you take your pictures and go on. But no, these are living things for us, and we appreciate the miracles that the Kadosh Baruch Hu did for us, in spite of the fact that it took place thousands and thousands of years ago. And we don't need monuments of bricks and stone of marble to engrave those things upon our heart. Those things are engraved upon our heart because of the significance that they have for our continuity as a Jewish people. So there's no Kedusha to these places. In contrast, as I said, like the Beis HaMikdash does have a Kedusha, because that's the place that Akash Baruch Hu set aside for the prayers of everyone to be ascending to Shemaim. And that's why, as we'll see the Rashbats now, he's going to mention that's why the Beis HaMikdash is called, or the Makom HaMikdash is Makom Beis HaMikdash is called Beis Elokim, because it's supremely significant in its ability to focus the prayers of all, not just Jews, all people. The time of Shlomo Melech, if a non-Jew wanted to come and bring a korban, he was able to come and bring a korban. He wouldn't be turned away if he brought the proper korban with the proper intentions. He would be welcome, and he could bring a korban. So let's take a look now at the Rashbats. We'll take a look at it inside. I can maybe try and get it onto the. If not, we'll start in the meantime before I get it on the screen. No sense spending time waiting for you to put on the screen. I'll try and get it on the screen. In the meantime, Lou, if you'd like to read, you can begin reading the Rashbats, and I'll work on getting onto the screen in the meantime. Okay.
Okay. Ki ha'adam ha'gedilo hakadosh baruch hu me ha'behemos shebaro b'talmo. Since man was elevated by Hashem above the animals that were created, that he created in his image, Shalo ne'emar b'sha'ar hanivraim she'nivra echad mehem b'tzelem Elokim, Ela Hadam. It does not say about other creations that were created that one of them was created in the image of God, except for man.
Right, that's exactly true, right.
Lefi sheyesh bo das ha lahakir es boro yoter mehem. accordingly, there is in him, in man, the wisdom to recognize his creator more than them, more than the other creations in the world.
Right. So that's the unique supremacy of Adam, that he's able to recognize his creator, and he makes a significant statement. Yoser mehem, yoser meaning with these two words, yoser mehem, he seems to be indicating that the other creations also have an ability to recognize a Kadosh Baruch Hu as their creator, but it's not as great as the ability that man has. Right, Barry? You agree with that understanding based on what he's saying here? He says here, why is Adam called, he was Nivra B'Tselem Elokim, because he has the ability to recognize, the understanding of, to recognize his creator more than him. These two words, Yoser Mehem, more than the rest of the creations. Meaning the rest of the creations also have an ability apparently to recognize Hashem, but not to the greatest ability. They don't have the understanding to the same level that Adam has.
So you're referring to the animals? The animals have the ability to recognize Hashem?
He says, he's saying his Hanivroim, and he didn't mention anything about Nivroim can sometimes apply simply only to animals. Sometimes it applies to everything that's created, right? So it could be on a very basic level. Everything has its ability to recognize the Kadosh Baruch Hu in some way or another. That's the whole. If you look at Pierke, Pierke Shira, that it brings down psukim for many different of the creations in the universe. How each one has a certain pasuk, a verse that applies to what it says, how it praises the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So that could be. It could be that everything has an innate ability to recognize its creator to some minimal or greater extent, depending on what it is, and how it's been created.
Well, that answer the question that Rebbe asked me. I have a question before I can answer, and that is that intellect that we have, is that part of B'Tselem Elokim?
Well, we haven't seen the Lahavin Lahaskil. Rashi says later on in Bereshis, he says Lahavin Lahaskil. So that's a question of the B'Demusoi, B'Tselmo, B'Demuso. We'll have to get into that. We'll have to leave that for another time. That's a whole discussion.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll mark it down.
Yeah, mark it down. Don't let me get away without not discussing that point. Okay?
but okay. But because the other question I had related to that is that is there a significance to the fact that Elohim is in the plural? The other names of Hashem seem to be in the singular because Hashem is one. But in this particular case, Elohim is the way it's written is a plural word.
Right. So that could be explained simply because the expression Elohim is that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is the Bala Kochos Kuloi, meaning he's the master of all the various different, as we said, the natural processes of the world, right, of the universe. All those natural processes, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is the Baal, he's the controller, he's the creator and control of all of those things. So that could represent the fact that it's a reference to the many different various natural and physical laws that are involved in the maintenance and the running of the universe. Right. But yeah, we see from this, we see that the Rashbats is learning that apparently the rest of the creations, to some greater or minor degree, have the ability to be Makares Baira. They have the ability to recognize Hashem.
Well, okay. Lewis asked this question before, and that is that concerning animals, recognizing Hashem, isn't there an opinion that in order to fix up a previous life, a Gilgul comes back as an animal?
Sometimes,
So
yeah,
that's so now
sometimes that occurs,
if
right?
they do that, do they come back with the intellect of a human? In other words, they're aware that they're a Gilgul, and they have a higher level of B'Tselem Elohim.
I probably not, but I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
I know I can tell you something that I did read in the Sefer Torah Mincha. That's a Talmud of the Rashba. So he's a Rishon, lived a good 700 years, maybe plus, from our time.
He's a contemporary of Rashi.
No, I think he came after Rashi. Came
Mhm.
about two and a half generations after Rashi, if I'm not mistaken. So he says there about why did the Chamor of Bilam have to die? Meaning, after what did it do? What did it do wrong? Funny that it should have to die. It did, apparently did nothing wrong. So why would the Chamor of Bilam have to die? So there are several explanations. Rashi, if I'm not mistaken, brings that maybe they would have made a voter Zorah out of it. They said, "Wow, this is a donkey that talks. We've got to bow down to this, right?" So rather than that, so it had to die. Number two, because of the covet of Bilam. Surprisingly enough, the Kadosh Baruch Hu would kill had the Chamor die, because people would say this is the Chamor that the donkey that talked to Bilam, and it would be a disgrace to Bilam that he lost an argument with the donkey, right? That would be a disgrace to a human being. So rather than have the human being to be disgraced, right? So it was better that the Chamor died. So those are two reasons, if I'm not mistaken. I think Rashi may bring both of those reasons down, but the Sefer and the Sefer that I'm quoting now of Torah Mincha brings these reasons, plus he brings another reason that it had to die because that when the donkey was given the ability to talk, right? So it had to have a spiritual component similar to a neshama, which was able to talk, right? That humans have the ability to talk because there's a spiritual component within them that gives them the ability to put all those different senses together and use their muscles together, and the brain functioning and all those things have to be coordinated properly that they can communicate and they can speak. So in order for the donkey to speak, it had to be given this extra component of a neshama, a human neshama, somewhat of this equivalent of a human neshama, and in order that it should be able to speak. So when it was infused with this human component of a neshama, and it was talking, so it had incorporated into itself this human element of this human spiritual element. And when it stopped talking, so that human element had to leave it, right? So when that human element of the ability to speak left it, that's what causes death. So you see why I'm mentioning this. You see that when a creature is given a human element of a spiritual human element, similar in some way in some portion of the neshama, so that elevates it into a certain status, right? So it could be that these people that have to come back through Gilgulim, maybe they have this special status to them and they have a certain understanding. Maybe not. I don't know. It's a complete speculation for me to talk about it. So I can't really continue to speak much more about it, but it's an interesting question. Okay, let's see a little further. Yeah, we have time. Sure. Let's see a little further.
V'nikra mipnei zeh telem Elokim. And the human is called telem Elokim, the image of God, because of this fact that he has the greater ability to recognize that he's created b'tselem Elokim. Ki hu ha nivchar v'ha mishmeres misheves mishubach
Shubach, right? The Shubach, right?
Mishubach shebecho hatsalmim. And since he is the choicest and the most praiseworthy of all of the images.
Yeah, I think I want to revise my definition of tsalmim in this context of forms. Tsalmim are like forms, meaning of all the created forms. I think it's a better contextual translation here to say tsalmim are forms. That was part of our discussion yesterday.
Right.
So
yeah. I have a big question mark over this, but based on what we were just saying,
yeah,
it might actually be consistent with the phrase yoser mehem, that the other creatures, the animals, and even the plants and even the rocks, they're all creations of Hashem, and yoser mehem implies that they all have some kind of, for lack of a better term, recognition of their relationship to Hashem. So maybe to call them tsalmim, that they're all, to some extent that we don't understand, images of Hashem.
right. Well, yeah, I mean, we could say that. That would be more of a chiddush that I'd like to try and say. I'd like to just, if we just define it here as forms, meaning like just to say there is more nivchar and meshubach mikol at something all other life forms or created forms.
Right.
So I think that'd be less of a chiddush. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Well, what is Rebbe saying about forms and B'Tselem?
Right.
What's the difference? I'm not understanding.
Right. We're focusing on the words here. The shebekol hatzlamim, right? Kol hatzlamim, right? So if we say like we were, this is I think what we can say based on our discussion of yesterday, that if we say kol hatzlamim, the image, like it's some type of image of a Kadosh Baruch Hu that they're in some way similar in some way, which is a very difficult thing to even speak about. If they're in similar, so they can't really say that they're similar. So don't say anything about being in the image. There's no image that we're discussing here because there is no image to be discussed, right? So rather, you can, as we were discussing yesterday, the word tselem has many different understandings. Like you were saying, it can be concealed. It's for sale. It's like a shadow. It's darkness. We even sell mobis, right? Gates of mobis. It's even darkness. It's kosher, right? It's also like an image. So here, like we can just say forms. I think it's like a tselem. Like why is it's a tselem is also a statue. It's a form. It's an image. It's something which has been created in a physical sense. So therefore, I'm just saying in terms of limiting the Chiddush and also therefore limiting the difficulty in understanding it, we can say that Adam is nivchar shebekol hatzlamim in all the forms. Of all the forms that the Kadosh Baruch Hu created during the creation of the universe, that includes the sun, the moon, the stars, the galaxies, the constellations. It includes the mountains, the winds, the things in the sea, all the things. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam nivchar u'meshubach mikol hatzlamim. From all the forms of what he created, Adam was the most nivchar, the most choice, and the most praiseworthy of all the things that were formed.
When Adam Rishon he was given the job of naming all the creatures, right? So he gave names which represented their capabilities,
right?
What they were created for. In other words, a fish has a certain tselem, a certain shape, because it has to exist and feed in the water, etc., or a horse. And the same thing with a human being. The human being has a tselem, which Hashem, it seems to be that Hashem gave him that shape because he has melachas to do. He has things to do. He has to write a Sefer Torah. He has to put on tefillin. He has to dig in the ground or whatever. So that's his tselem seems to be designed for his function, just like any other creature.
Right.
So it doesn't seem to be connected to intellect.
Well, I mean, there's the actual form, and then there's Adam is given a certain greater aspect of his existence, which is his intellect, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's also.
I'm just trying to get the connection between the tselem and the intellect.
Well, because that's here. Any of all the four, we just say is the most meshubach and nivchar of all the things which were formed. Then that we can go with that as a very easy definition without getting into a lot of philosophical and conceptual questions and difficulties.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's our working definition.
Yeah, I think so. I think we can do. I think that'll be very helpful. That definition. Yeah, for sure.
Kamo shadam. I'm sorry. Kamo ha'adam sheyesh lo kli chemda. It's like a man that has an exquisite instrument. Yomar, it says, is Yomar the end of that sentence or the beginning of the next sentence?
Well, Yomer, I mean, it's like a person that has a exquisite implement. Yomer, he will say about it. He says about this, like I told you, the guy who was parachuted into the African tribes with a flashlight, becomes a king, right?
Until the battery runs out.
What's that?
Until the battery runs out, right?
Until the battery runs out. But
that's what you said.
You would be smarter, Barry. You'd take a solar powered flashlight. But then you're in trouble when it's a cloudy day. You'd be in trouble.
No, I think I would not parachute in there. I think that's a better solution. Don't look for trouble.
You don't want to be a king?
Don't look for no. Kings usually don't live out their term. Usually, yeah. That it seems to be that way.
So the person who has this exquisite instrument would say, "Zeh hu kli shali." This is my instrument. Klomar, as to say, hanechmar shebechol hakelim sheyesh lo, that it is more beloved than all of the implements that he has. V'chein nikra ha'ish hanikbad mikol ha'anashim, and similarly, we call a man the nikbad is the choicest.
And Nichbad, he's the most noble. He's most noble. Mikol Anashim.
He's the most noble of all people. We call Ha'ish, the man, the most noble of all ha'anashim. Isn't that the same word, anashim and ish?
Well, no, I mean we call the person who's the most noble of all people, right? We call him Ish Elokim.
We call him Ish Elokim. Okay, so we're referring to Moshe Rabbeinu now.
Right. That meaning that's a reference to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most nichbad. He was the most noble of all people who ever created, and therefore he's referred to as Ish Elokim, meaning Kadosh Baruch Hu attached his name to the reference to Moshe Rabbeinu because he Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who fulfilled his purpose in life as the one who not only he acknowledged and recognized the Kadosh Baruch Hu more than anybody else, but it also gave everybody else, he gave all humans for all times, for all generations, the ability to come to recognitions of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore he was called Ish Elokim.
But what's the v'chein? Is that connecting it to the previous sentence?
Yeah, I mean he started with the mashal. He said the kamosh ha'adam shesh lo klichem, the yomer. He says about it, ze kli sheli. That's my kli. That's my kli. Right.
Right.
And koloma, it's nechmad. It's nechmad. It's the most valued of all kelim sheshli. It's the most valued of all the instruments that I have. Right.
Right. So the person who has the exquisite kli says, "This is my kli," as to say that this kli is more beloved than anything else to him.
Right.
So what I'm losing is now the therefore. Therefore, because he says, "I have this great kli," we call him Ish Elokim.
Right. V'chein, right? V'chein, likewise, nikra ish nichbad mikol anash. I mean, therefore, a person who is the most nichbad, is the most honorable, noble of all people. He's called Ish Elokim. Meaning, Kadosh Baruch Hu, it's like he has all these people. He has all these people, and the most nichbad of all the people is called Ish Elokim. Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying it's like that's my person, that's my man. Just like the person has the kli, he says that's my kli.
Got
right?
it.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. So v'chein base Elokim, and similarly, the house, which is the most beloved of all the houses, is called the house of God. Which is a reference to the base of Mikdash. Mipnei shehu nichbad mikol ha-batim, because it is the most noble of all of the houses. V'likbol ha-tefillah, lekibul hatfila, because the prayer is received there.
Right. Of all places, of all batim, like of all structures, it's the most superior of all places for the reception of prayers.
V'chein nikra Har Sinai, and similarly, he calls Har Sinai Har HaElokim, the mountain of God. Mipnei shehu hanichbad shebechol haharim, because it is the most noble of all the mountains. Legi Lui Shechina, in that there at Har Sinai, the Shechina was revealed.
Very good. Right.
Vanikra Mata Moshe, and it refers to the staff of Moshe, Mata HaElokim, as the staff of God. Lefi she near O Bo Maaseh Elokim be Benesim Shenaasu Bo, because that we see in it the actions of God in the miracles that were made with it, with it being the staff.
Right. Exactly.
The Nikra Etzba Elokim, and it's called the finger of God. Hakli Shenechreso Bo Ha Divaros Belochos. Beluchos, the tablets.
So it's referred to as Etzbe Elokim because that was the cleave, whatever it happened to have been, that was engraved the divine, the Asaras Dibros and the Luchos.
Oh, the Dibros are the Ten Commandments.
Right.
Oh.
Right.
So the finger is referred to as a kli. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I would even say, I mean, I would apply it a little bit further. If you remember the Khartoumim of Paro, the sorcerers of Paro, they referred to, I believe it was when it was Kinim, in the Marcus Kinim, they said the Etzbe Elokim, because they referred to as the Etzbe Elokim.
Yes.
Right.
That's the whole basis for that whole discussion in the Haggadah about 10 becomes 50 and all that stuff. Right.
So what did they mean when it was the Etzbe Elokim? They were saying that these kinim point to the fact that this is a Kadosh Baruch Hu doing it, right?
Right.
It made it clear without any questions, except Paro because he was a big Russia. But it was clear to the Khartoumim, the sorcerers at least, that this was not coming from magic, that was sorcery that was being done. This was something that was clearly being done through the active intervention of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So they referred to that as this is the Etzbe Elokim. It points directly to a Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Right. Lefi shehu ha-nichbad shebechol hakelim ha-nivraim, because that it is the choicest. I'm sorry, not the choicest. It's the most noble of all the implements that were created.
Yeah, I just want to check this pasuk. 1 second. Interesting. This is strange. This is strange because the Etzbe Elokim, that pasuk is the pasuk talking about Kinim, right?
Right. So how do we get from there to the Aseret Dibros?
I have no idea. I have really no idea.
It gives a reference. Shmos. Oh, you looked up that reference, and that's the Kini.
That's the key. That's exactly right. That's the Kinim.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, that is bizarre.
No, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's. So I have to take a look at the references to the Luchos.
No,
I think there is a reference there to Etzbe Elokim as well, but
Oh, there is.
Rabbi, the pasuk that I see, what is it? Chet Tedvav. It says the sorcerer said to Pharaoh, "It is a finger of God." But Pharaoh's heart was strong, and he did not heed them as Hashem had spoken.
right. So that's a reference to the Kinim. That's not a good reference to
Oh,
the
okay.
Dibros, right?
Is there a Rashi on that, Meir?
Let me see. I don't have my Rashi thing here, but 15, it's finger of God, though they had no choice to acknowledge, but the plague was of divine origin. The magicians attempted to minimize it by calling it only a finger of God. Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, it
All right.
was the lice, the Kenan.
Yeah, that was definitely nice. All right, I'll tell you what, since I don't want to go too far over our time, let's finish the paragraph and then we'll have to pick up next week, Bli Neder, we'll have to pick up and see how he's, because if I'm not mistaken, there is some reference to Etzbe Elokim by the Luchos, but I have to find the psukim or the chazal that refers to that. But let's leave with this is a question for the time being, and let's just finish the next lines, finish this paragraph. They'll come back to it beginning next week. Be'ezer Hashem, Bli Neder.
Okay, great.
V'chein nikra ha'adam telem Elokim. And similarly, the man is called the image of God. Lefi shehu ha'nichbad shebechol ha'nivraim ha'tachtonim bidamim.
Bidamus, that's bidamus.
Bidamus I'm sorry, vivavina.
Ubebina, bidamus, ubebina. We'll have to discuss these two things. This is going to be the answers. This is going to be the beginning of the discussion, Barry, that you wanted to ask your question on about later today about the human intellect, right? That's what we'll have to. So with these two lines, we're going to have to continue with these two lines next week. First, number one, to try and determine what it means, the reference to the Etzbe Elokim in terms of the Luchos. Now he's introducing this concept of B'demus Vina, in understanding. So we'll continue with that next week. So I guess in the meantime we'll take a little break. Roy, should have a good afternoon. Hopefully to see you tomorrow, Erev Shabbos, 9:30 tomorrow, Be'ezer Hashem.
Okay.
And good. Hope to see you. Thank you, Lou. And we'll be back in a few moments, Be'ezer Hashem.
Well, Yeshkayach, Lou.